guys, today we're going to be talking about dividing fractions. One of the first vocabulary words when you talk about when dividing fractions is the multiplicative inverse, or also called the reciprocal. Those words are both interchangeable, and the definition of a multiplicative inverse or reciprocal is two numbers whose product are 1. Okay, so we have 1/3. And its reciprocal or multiplicative inverse is 3/1. So when you multiply 1/3 times 3, or 3/1, you get 3/3, which equals 1. Okay, so a multiplicative inverse is basically just as simple as flipping your fraction over inverse, and if you multiply it by that initial fraction, it equals 1. So I will be using those two words, multiplicative inverse and reciprocal, interchangeable, meaning the same exact thing. Okay, I have a little saying here. You can ask why, but this helps me remember what to do with fractions. When dividing fractions, don't ask why, flip the second and multiply. That's our rule. It's really easy. It's just like when you're doing adding and subtracting integers. You want to always do leave change opposite. This is what you always do with dividing fractions. When dividing fractions, don't ask why, flip the second and multiply. So for example, we have 2/3 divided by 2/5. So what we do is we keep the 2/3, we flip the second, or take the multiplicative inverse or reciprocal of 2/5, and we make it 5/2, and then we multiply straight across. Of course, you can do cross-reducing first, but I went ahead and did it outright normal. 5 times 2 is 10, 3 times 2 is 6, then I reduced to 5/3, and then I said my answer is 1 2/3. So you're asking basically how many times can 2/5 go into 2/3? Well, we know 2/5 is smaller than 2/3, so we know it's going to go in there at least once. So is this answer reasonable? Absolutely. Okay? So you might be asking why, which is a legitimate question. In my I'm going to show you why through an example. We talked a little bit about this when we were talking about tenths and hundredths. And we remember whenever you do 3 divided by 10, I went ahead and did the math out here. So I did 3 divided by 10. It ends up being 0.3. Okay? Remember when we were talking about taking 1/10 of something, you can also times it by 1/10. So if we multiply 3 times 1/10, we're at 3/1 times 1/10, and that's 3/10, which is also 0.3. So it shows us right here that whenever you're dividing by a number, it's the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. So 3 divided by 10 is the same thing as multiplying 3 times 1/10. So that proves why this is true. Okay, so now you know the reason why, so now you know to do it every single time. It makes it a lot easier, all right? So when dividing fractions, don't ask why. Well, we already answered the why. Flip the second and multiply. Okay, some rules that we're going to follow is just like the multiplication rules. We got to make sure it's improper before we even start. Okay, so if your fraction is a mixed number, we need to make it improper first and then do everything. And we also want to make sure we follow the integer rules for the negatives. If they have the same sign and they're being divided by each other, it's positive. If they have a different sign and they're being divided by each other, it's negative. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through 3 examples. Pause it and do each of them on your own, and I will walk you through the answers, all right? The first one we have is 1/3 divided by 5/9. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to take 1/3 and multiply by 5/9 reciprocal, which is 9/5. Okay? Now we have a multiplication problem just like we did yesterday in class, and it should be just back to normal, multiplying fractions. So it's really easy. You take one step, do it, and it's already turned into a multiplication problem. Okay? So we can cross-reduce this. 3 goes to 1, 9 goes to 3. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 5 is 5. So the answer of 1/3 divided by 5/9 is 3/5. Okay? All right, example 2. We have negative 7.5 divided by 2 1/10. Okay? So we need to make sure we have them as improper fractions first. So 7 times 2 is 14 plus 1, so that's going to give us 15 halves, which is a negative, divided by 10 times 2 is 20 plus 1, 21 tenths. Okay, we haven't flipped yet. We need to go ahead and flip. Okay, so we're going to keep our first fraction the same, 15 halves, times the reciprocal or multiplicative inverse of 21 tenths, which would be 10 over 21. Okay, there's a lot of cross reducing that could go on here. All right, 10 and 2 we know are both even, so they're both divisible by 2. So that makes that 1 and that 5. I know 15 and 21 both have a factor of 3. So 3 goes into 21 7 times. 3 goes into 15 5 times. Okay. And I think we're as cross-reduced as we can. So the top is now negative 5 and 5, which is negative 25. And the bottom is 1 and 7. 1 times 7 is 7. Okay, so we need to make this a proper fraction, or a mixed number. So 7 goes into 25 3 times. And it has 4 left over. So my answer is going to be a negative, because we had a negative divided by a positive, so that's different sign, it's negative, negative 3 and 4/7. Okay, our next one is we have a fraction divided by a whole number, 3/4 divided by 11. So remember, whenever we have whole numbers and fractions, we can always write them over 1, and they are all a fraction. 11 divided by 1 is 11. So 3/4, we're going to rewrite 11 as a fraction. Okay, so when dividing fractions, don't ask why, flip the second and multiply. Okay, so we're going to take 3/4 and multiply by the multiplicative inverse of 11 over 1, which is 1 over 11. And simply multiply that. I don't think there's any cross-reducing I can do here. 3 and 11 are reduced, and 1 and 4 are reduced. So 3 times 1 is 3. 4 times 11 is 44. So my answer is 3 over 44. Thanks, guys.